going to Hong Kong, maybe I'll say a little bit about the Hong Kong Sangha. Um, First of all, I've been to Hong Kong now about 4 or 5 times, and everything I knew about Hong Kong before I left, I went there the first time. I just thought of it as this big city. But actually, Hong Kong's a little bit more like a city state. So there is the commercial and the urban center, but there's also rural areas around it, and it's all part of the area we call Hong Kong. And for those of you who are in the Bay Area, in some ways, Hong Kong is a lot like the Bay Area. There's a bay, and especially when you get out into the rural islands, there are beautiful views out to the bay. It's just magnificent. And the mountains are green, and this is a subjective opinion, but quite powerful, actually. And it's warm and it's humid. And it just, especially out on the island, it has again, another subjective opinion, but a lovely ambiance. And it's a nice place to practice. And they've got quite a large practice community in Hong Kong and on the island. And I will be splitting my time between both places. The Zen Center, which is right smack in the downtown commercial area of Hong Kong. It's, what is it? I think it's the 5th floor of this building. And you walk in, and it's quite a large space. It's probably bigger than our Zen Center here in Berkeley. They could sit a lot of people in the Dharma room. And interestingly, it's interesting actually talking online and seeing people here. There were a pretty good mix, male, female, but often, especially in the old days, Empty Gate felt pretty male, and it's the leadership has been male for a very long time, and that has its positives and negatives. But when you go to Hong Kong, it's definitely female-led. Daquan Sanim is she's a monastic, and she's been a monastic a long time. She was telling us her kind of opening experience, and her first spiritual experiences happened while she was working as a retail clerk in a department store. And she, I believe, was born in Malaysia and went to a Catholic school in Hong Kong, but also has some Muslim background too. So she's quite mixed. But when she had her experience, she took it seriously, and she really started practicing. And she practiced in the Thai forest lineage, and I believe it was with Ajahn Chah, who was an important teacher turns out, for Buddhism in the United States, the Vipassana community that grew up first here in the Bay Area and now really all around the country. A number of the original teachers, their root teacher was Ajahn Chah. And she was quite serious about it. She lived in a cave for a couple of years, just practicing. Interestingly, somehow or other, and I don't know this part of the story, maybe I'll fill it in when I come back, but she met Zen Master Bon Soeng. And when she met Zen Master Bon Soeng, she moved over to Zen practice. There was something that the immediacy and the aliveness of Zen practice brought for her, along with that deep, deep meditative experience that enlivened her practice. And when she started teaching in Hong Kong, probably in the 90s, it was very difficult to get a foothold. She was doing a Korean-style practice. She was obviously a woman in a male-dominated society. And it took a while for the Sangha to really get its footing. But they've got many, many members. I've seen pictures where they certainly have over 100 people in their Dharma space in the city. And then they got, let's see how I can explain this. There's an island called Lantau Island. And when I first when I first went to Hong Kong in 1991, 93, the airport was still in the main part of the city, and the island was like had fishing villages. And what I remember is it's just a very large bronze Buddha up at the top of a hill. Now I've been to, that was brand new when I was there in 1993, but now it's a tourist attraction. Last year when we were in Hong Kong, we went there and ate at just a wonderful Chinese restaurant. I think I saw when we went in there, it was Michelin rated and just amazingly fantastic food.
That's subjective.
There's a lot of subjectivity in this talk. So now they have 2 practice spaces on the island. They just renovated an old building. Lantau Island was kind of the spiritual center of Hong Kong in the 17, 18, 1900s. And a lot of it is old, and they've just taken over a new building and did an amazing renovation to it and have just a beautiful, beautiful Dharma hall. And if you remember the talk I gave, about a year ago when I came back, I gave a talk about Daquan's A, B, C, D, and E. And it's a little, it feels a little trite to say it over and over again, but that A, B, C, D, and E is a shorthand way to remember our practice. A means awareness. Come into this moment. Marshall, in his meditation instructions, talk about going into the body, feeling gravity, awareness of what's actually around us and is us. Becoming aware is the first step to practice. Without that awareness of this moment, there is no practice. Once we become aware, we can find our breath. So B stands for breath. Breathing in, what am I? Breathing out, don't know. Finding the groundedness of that breath, allowing that breath to come way down into our lower abdomen, where we find our center and our balance. So once we become aware, we find our breath. And as I pointed our breath, we find our breath in our lower abdomen. We find our breath in our center, C. To take a moment of becoming aware and breathing allows us to become centered. Our energy is always dashing outward. To become centered means to bring ourselves back to our true home. I always need to do this to point my camera. Right here in our lower abdomen. In the Japanese tradition, they simply call it the hara, or the center. In Korea and in China, we call it the tangen, energy garden. I think of it as the connection point to the entire universe. When we say, myself and the universe are one, well, of course, subjectively, again, I feel like I live in this body. But from the center, this body connects with the universe. Like the image I have is like a pumpkin attached to the stem of the plant. The pumpkin itself has its own integrity, but without being connected to the plant, there is no pumpkin. And as soon as you cut that pumpkin off, you've started the rotting and the decaying process. So to be alive, we have to be connected. To be alive, we need to know our center. So maybe you could also say, along with C for center, you could say C for connected. That it's not me here and the world out there. Me and the world become one. That is Zen practice. So we got A, B, C. D means don't know. Raising great doubt. Without great doubt, there is no Zen practice. You can study Buddhism as long as you want, and you'll learn something and it'll help you in some ways. But without the practice of great doubt, there really is no meditation and there is no Zen. And if remember, Zen literally translates meditation. And meditation from the Zen perspective is sitting with great doubt. What am I? What is this? So much of what we think we know and understand, it's all the conceptual framework that we've developed in our minds to protect us and to make ourselves safe. Dropping into don't know, dropping into great doubt, in some ways removes the safety. And it also removes the deadening protection that's all around us. And it allows us to be alive, not just to what we like, but also to what we don't like. To be able to clearly and without subjective experience, just see, just hear, just smell, just taste, and just touch. The last one, E, stands for effort. Without effort, again, there's no Zen. We don't just sit and fall asleep. We sit and cultivate great doubt. What is this? Our lives are complex and often very difficult to find our way through. To make that effort means to face it rather than to cover it over and run away. Awareness, breath, center, don't know, and effort. If we could remember those 5 things, we won't forget our practice. We can remember our practice kind of well enough when we're in meditation or in the Dharma room or at a Dharma talk. But can we remember our practice when we're eating dinner, when we're in an argument with somebody close to us, when our desires or needs aren't being met? Is it possible to remember our practice then? And I know for myself, I can get fooled by thinking remembering my practice means that I'll feel better. James is shaking his head. It's obviously that, as wonderful as feeling better is, that's actually not the point of practice either. The point of practice is to be with what is and deal with it. We spend so much of our lives separating ourselves and not dealing. We all know that experience of having something difficult we need to say and then choosing not to say it because it's too hard or we're afraid of the pushback. Or for some of us, we just blurt it out without really taking into account what we're doing. So there's no right and wrong to any particular thing, but just now, what is it? Just now, what am I doing? So that was the end of my talk. Now I'm going to go to the beginning of my talk. I wasn't here last week, but I did happen to catch Paul's Dharma talk last week. And another subjective experience, a subjective viewpoint, I thought Paul's talk was amazing. I told Paul I thought it was the best talk he ever gave. He just ruined it completely. That's the trouble with compliments. It goes right to our head. Then we think we're something special. But what was beautiful about Paul's talk was, first of all, it felt like there was absolutely no pretense. He said, to begin his talk, he was stuck because he was trying to teach something. But once he let go of the idea of teaching, then he could show it. And it was interesting watching him because again, probably my eighth subjective viewpoint, there was an aliveness because he didn't know what to do. And we often think it's much better if we know. But if we know, we just give the canned version. If we don't know, we give the alive version. And in the alive version, there's mystery, there's wonder. The alive version allows something to emerge that isn't just an old thought. I know for myself, I've been giving these Dharma talks for about over 40 years now. And every once in a while, it becomes exciting when something emerges that I didn't know before. Some way the Dharma gets put together that's new, and fresh and alive. It often takes a different way of it being spoken in order for us to really hear it. Like in the quantum school of Zen, we have language, we have jargon. Don't know mind can be jargon. You hear that phrase, yeah, don't know mind, yeah, I already know that. But if you already know that, then you're not practicing don't know mind. Don't know mind, don't know doesn't mean don't know. Don't know is the entire universe manifesting right now. In all of its glory, good, bad, the whole full catastrophe of it. We like what we're comfortable with. We resist what makes us uncomfortable. But to be alive means to actually be on the edge and be a little bit at risk. So once Paul gave up the idea of teaching Zen, he could show it. So that was Paul's first point. His second point was we need something to shift our minds. Our minds can become stale and rigid. We get comfortable in our beliefs. We psychologically even, we create this as much comfort as we can get. But the risk of that comfort is falling asleep. So we think we want peace and calmness, but we need things shaken up a little bit. So Paul said what he did is he went to a retreat somewhere where he hadn't been before. I think that's a good idea, especially if you've been sitting a lot of retreats in our style. Go somewhere else. Listen to a Dharma talk somewhere else. There's so many Dharma talks online. Take a jump. Listen to somebody that you aren't drawn to. Be curious. Be open. Zen means meditation. Whether you do it somewhere else or you do it with us here at Empty Gate or in Hong Kong or anywhere in the world, this practice of intensive meditation is meant to do what Paul was talking about, to shake us up. And those of us who sit a lot of retreats, and there's a lot of people in this room and online who sit retreats pretty much month after month after month after month. We probably ask ourselves, why do that? That's already raised. Karen already understands. She knows the beauty of coming back. And what Karen will often tell me is, I don't know how to practice. And we think, okay, well, we should know how. But we need some help with that. But not knowing how to practice is a beautiful way to do it, because we can't rest on what's happened before. What is it right now? You sit in a long meditation retreat, sometimes the periods fly by and you feel grounded and really connected. Other times, at least in my experience, I can't sit still. I keep the posture and I keep basically a calm body, but inside there's a lot going on. There's tension, there's frustration, there's doubt, not great doubt, but self-doubt, insecurity, all the human conditions. And to sit in the midst of all of that is real Zen practice. And unless we give enough space, enough time, enough room for things to appear, we really won't get to the edges of who we are. We won't really get to push into the concept of I am and move towards not knowing. So we have our sitting practice, we have our retreat practices, we have chanting. Chanting is a wonderful practice. I think I'm on my 9th subjective statement, but I don't know why we chant. I can tell you stories, I can explain some nice things, but chanting doesn't make sense to me at all. And it took me a long time to embrace that. It's not rational. It's non-rational. Every culture all over the world has sound, music, movement as a deep spiritual expression, because I think it cuts through the rational mind and hits us at some place that we don't understand. So we get to feel that don't know center in our chanting. So chanting is a style of meditation. In our retreats and in our morning practice, we also have bowing practice. Another one that makes no sense to me. There's a lot we can say about bowing, but it's now about 45 years that I've been part of quantum style practicing. And to be honest with you, number 10, I have never liked bowing. I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. So probably now about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago or longer, I had a problem with the cartilage in my knee. It wasn't a problem except when I bowed. It was a perfect difficulty for me because my knee was fine until I bowed. But what the MRI showed was there was a little piece of cartilage that when I did the full prostration on my knees, the little piece of cartilage got stuck in the joint. So when I got up, my knee would lock. So my first thought was, fantastic. I don't have to bow anymore. I get what I want. My second thought was, I have to have surgery because I've got to get that little piece of cartilage removed so I could keep bowing. Because, and some of you have heard me say this before, in my number 11 subjective experience, having parts of our practice that we don't like is actually quite important. If we only do what we like, then we're still staying in that comfort zone. So to open ourselves up to what we don't like and to do that, that's again moving right back into don't know. And the irony was I had to argue with the doctor to get surgery. He didn't want to give it to me. He said, it's not that bad. It only happens once. Leave it alone. I said, no, you don't understand. I have to bow. And for better or worse, I was able to convince him. So now I have to bow again. So is it good or is it bad? You know, I come here on Tuesday mornings sometimes for practice, and I don't bow every day. And over the last 6 months, I've got this new problem where it takes about 10 bows for my knee to warm up. And again, it was another excuse. Oh, I could just do standing bows. But no, now I have to go through it. It turns out now it's about 10 bows. it might turn into 20. I've got to use my hands. It's not that painful, but it's, again, another little tripwire that I have to get over in order to do my practice. So here's another encouragement. Since you can't really teach Zen, as what Paul said, the whole point of a Dharma talk is to orient you to practice. You can study Buddhism. There's a lot to learn in Buddhism. But unless you practice, you're just feeding your mind. You're feeding your small mind. If you want to get connected to your true self, you have to push at the boundaries. And that takes the effort of actually doing it. And being just like the Buddha lived in luxury and could have all of his desires satisfied, what the Buddha realized was that's not enough. It was actually, what do we call them? Velvet handcuffs. They might be comfortable, but you're still stuck. And it takes that effort, to start pulling at them and working them and getting a sense of what they are and finding those points that bring you to liberation. And Buddhism and Zen is a practice of liberation, freedom from our narrow, constricted self, and liberation into the vast openness of this very moment. So briefly, the last thing that Paul talked about was the recognition that if I practice for me, it's just a way of remaining in my self-centered world of a prison. But if I can turn it to all beings, then there's a freedom and there's an openness. Zen Master Soeng used to say, for me, suffering appears. For all beings, no suffering. You're just giving. And if you're suffering while you're giving, it's probably because you're giving actually for yourself. You know, we do that a lot. We think we're helping other people. And we even can do the motions that are helpful. But if it's for my gratification, then it's not really for all beings. To practice for others is actually quite challenging. And if you think you're good at it, you may be missing the way that for all beings really is for myself. If I'm good, if I am generous, then I'm a good person, so then I can feel better about myself. That's still the trap of self-centeredness. So actually practicing for others is quite difficult. So we try for 10,000 years nonstop. Let go of the criticism, let go of the judgments, and just do it. When it's bowing time, bow. If you like bowing, wonderful, you get a nice experience. If you don't like bowing, wonderful, you get to work with your not liking. But each moment is a practice moment. So there's our Dharma room practice, and there's our everyday life practice. What am I unites both practices. There really is no separation.